Hey everyone, happy Friday! Thanks for joining me here today. I want to give you a free Friday tip in the form of a bit of a personal experience that I had this week. My dad and I got to go this week up into the mountains and we went snowshoeing. For those of you that don't know, I live in Salt Lake City and we experience all the four seasons. So in the wintertime, that means lots of skiing and sledding and snowboarding and snowshoeing, just for everyone in general. So my dad and I got to go up snowshoeing and it was an awesome time. I love to be active and work out and get outside, but I've got to be honest, I'm a novice hiker and an even more novice snowshoer. So those are not things that come naturally for me necessarily. And it was really cool. This snowshoeing opportunity was such a great time with my dad, and it was chock full of all sorts of awesome lessons. So when I tell you about it, so I want to tell you a little bit about our trip. So we went up into the mountains. The place where we decided to go snowshoeing was somewhere I've been hiking before. Never snowshoeing up there before, but hiking before. As we started off, within like 2 minutes, I was out of breath and huffing and puffing, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is not nearly as easy as the hike that I've done here before. This snowshoeing thing's a lot harder. Snowshoeing in my mind is a lot harder. You have the resistance of the snow as it sticks onto your snowshoes and as you're going up. And this was an awakening to me that this same trail that I'd hiked before was easy when I hiked it, and this time as snowshoeing, not so much. So my dad and I were going up. And if any of my friends that are watching this are family, they all know that have been hiking with me. When I hike, I take breaks frequently. And the way I take breaks is by being like, hey guys, maybe we should, like, out of breath, turn around and like check out the scenery here. And I turn around and like, as gracefully as possible, but not really gracefully, try to, hide the fact that I'm gasping for breath and take in the scenery. Truth be told, I do love taking in the scenery as I'm hiking. Because what's the point of being outside if you're not going to take it all in? But I take opportunities frequently as I'm hiking to stop and turn around and take in the scenery, and also to catch my breath. Snowshoeing was no different. I took so many breaks on the way up, so many stops, stopping to have to catch my breath as I went up, and still to appreciate the beautiful scenery too. So stopping many times along the way with my dad as we kept going. There were lots of other snowshoers and cross-country skiers along that path going up and down, and talking with many of them. Many of them reached certain points along the trail and came back. And as we talked to them on the way up, they'd say, oh, we went up to this point and then came back. Most of them actually didn't even go all the way up to our final destination. Most went part of the way and came back. And it was cool to see everybody, coming on the way down as we kept going. On this particular trail, the majority of the trail is not incredibly steep. About the last quarter of a mile or so becomes much more steep. And there are signs as you get closer to let you know how close you are. There's a very typical stopping point that you have to decide to go past. And my dad and I decided to push and go past there. As we kept going, I found it was interesting. If I thought too much about how far I was away from our end point, I felt weaker. If I instead just put my head down and just focused on my next step, just taking one next step at a time, it was a lot easier just to focus on my next step, the next thing that was coming up. And I was able to feel a lot stronger that way. It also helped a lot as I was going up to step in my dad's footsteps. He led us up there and he went first, and the more I was able to step in his footsteps through the deeper snow, the easier it became for me. I also noticed, of course, like I said, I took many breaks as we went up to catch my breath, but I noticed I didn't like to take long breaks. If I started taking long breaks, it was a lot harder for me to get up and get into the groove of things. Even though I was tired, and definitely tired by the time we reached that last quarter of a mile, even though I was tired, it was easier to take just short breaks and then to continue keeping on going, to just push on, keep on going. And at the end of it all, so after pushing through that last quarter mile, we finally reached the top, and it was gorgeous and glorious, and the view was spectacular. It was absolutely worth the fact that our legs felt like jello. 100%. It was just absolutely worth it. And I have to tell you, so I think of my students often throughout the week, and throughout the entire course of this snowshoeing, my students kept coming to mind, because I felt like this snowshoeing experience was chock full of all sorts of awesome, good little tidbits of things that I feel like would help all of my students. And I wanted to record this video, your Free Friday tip, up there with him at the top that we'd reached, but well, for one, to make you guys so jealous of this beautiful state that I live in if you don't live here, but also, I mean, just to give you this awesome, like this heartfelt information, all these awesome tidbits and just golden nuggets of just things that I feel like you should all hear. But I wanted to be present with my dad in that moment, so I refrained. But I decided, no, I want to come share this with you later. So some things I was thinking of applicable to you guys and to my students along the way. Number one, just like I started on this trail, and it was a trail I'd hiked before. It was easier when I hiked it, more difficult when I snowshoed. We're going to come across times in our life where we're embarking on new things or learning new things, or even learning things we've done before, just like I've hiked this trail before, but now snowshoed it. We're going to come across times when we have to restart again. Maybe we're learning a piece of music for a second time and focusing on some new techniques. And maybe for whatever reason, even though we've done it before, just like me snowshoeing, for whatever reason, it's more difficult the second time around. Maybe we're challenging ourselves with something new. Maybe we've failed in a way, not necessarily a personal failure, but had a physical failure, or have stopped practicing or getting back into the swing of things. And so we're getting back and playing something that we've played or done before. And it's more difficult this time. I invite you to treat yourself with more grace and understanding. See what you have to gain out of this new experience. Like I said, with my snowshoeing, this time I snowshoed the same trail. It was infinitely harder, but I felt so much stronger, and I felt so much more accomplished at the end of it, having gotten to the very top. In your season and time and place in life, see what you can learn and what you can realize about where you are experiencing this for the second time. Maybe you're playing a piece you've played in the past, and maybe for whatever reason, maybe you're focusing on some new techniques that you didn't know how to do in the past and you're learning how to do now. Maybe for that reason it's more difficult. But own it and say, you know what, I'm leveling up. I'm leveling up and focusing on new techniques, and that's why it's harder. Maybe you're playing something that you've played in the past because maybe you've kind of fallen off the practicing wagon a little bit, which happens for so many different reasons. Rather than beat yourself down and think, oh, I remember the time when this used to be easy and now it's hard. Give yourself some grace, cut yourself some slack, and say, you know what? I'm getting back up. I'm getting back on it, and that's worth it. That is incredible strength right there, to get back up, to continue going and pressing on. So notice these little things. Just like I had to pause and catch my breath along the trail, I feel like that's so applicable in our music and our learning. There are times when we've just got to pause for a second, and whatever our course is that we're pursuing, whatever it's a piece that we're learning or something that we're working towards, we've got to just pause, catch our breath, and also be grateful for how far you've come. Just like I would pause and catch my breath and turn around and appreciate the scenery, do the same. Give yourself a pat on the back and recognize how far you've come, what it's taken to get to this point. Breathe for just a second and then keep going, okay? Keep at it, little by little. Just like I came across some people along the trail as I was going up, other snowshoers coming down and coming up that said, oh, we only went this far, oh, we went this far. You will encounter people in your life, certainly in music, that have only gone so far, or that will try to give you silent permission to stop or tell you, oh, you've done enough. I encourage you to remember that this is an individual journey. This is your journey. You're up against yourself and no one else. This is totally your journey. Don't accept other people's opinions and what they have to say as permission to stop and to give up. Keep pressing forward. Keep moving towards your goals. You'll find people, even our greatest supporters, even family, friends, spouses. They may say, "Oh, well, don't you think you've practiced enough today?" Or I think that's enough. I think, and it's easy to accept their silent permission to be like, "No, I guess you're right. I'll just be done for the day." Okay, push towards your goals. And don't give up. Push towards your individual goals and don't accept how far they've gone or how far they think you should go as permission to stop and give up. Keep going, keep pushing. It really helped me a lot remembering the taking one step at a time on my trail. Like I mentioned, it was interesting because I knew I wanted to get to the top of this trail, but if I thought about that too much, it was funny. It almost became overwhelming and harder for me to take the next step. If instead I just put my head down like I did on my hike, put my head down and literally just took one step at a time, it became easier to get there. I feel like that's important to remember in our musical journey and just our life journey as well. Of course, we always have goals and endpoints to keep in mind, but I think sometimes it's hard to stay motivated when we're constantly comparing where we are here compared to where we should be up there and thinking like, oh, look how far I am still though from there. Look at, oh, there's so much longer to go. And I think that's hard. I think it's important to keep the goals in the back of our mind. Absolutely. But just take the next right step. The next right step. I just recently watched Frozen 2 as well. And they talk about doing the next right thing. Do the next right thing. Okay, take the next right step. Keep that goal in the back of your mind, but don't worry about it otherwise. Take the next right step and then the next one after that. Don't get too overwhelmed. You'll get there. It's going to be okay. One thing that helped me a lot, like I mentioned, is stepping in my dad's footsteps. I noticed as I was on my trail going up, if I stepped outside of those footsteps, I could still make it up. The snow was deeper. I could still make it up the hill, but it was a lot harder. And a lot of strength and ease came when I just stepped in the same footsteps my dad did. View that as your leaders. As you're going through and you're practicing or you're working towards your goals, you likely have coaches or mentors or teachers that are helping you. Don't work harder than you need to. Take their advice. They're coaches and mentors and teachers for a reason. They've likely been where you are now and can give you some insight on how to tread this. Yes, they're going to individualize your plan a little bit here, but don't feel like you have to take your own individual steps where no one's gone before. Talk with them. Trust them. Reach out to them and get their guidance so that you can take smart steps as you're going forward. It's totally 100% worth it. It'll make it a lot easier. Like I realized on the path up, especially on that last quarter mile, holy cow, I could pause, but if I paused and took too long, it was harder to get back into the swing of things. My legs became tired and they they felt more like jello. I could pause, but I had to keep going. Our practicing, guys, is no different. Pause, yes. Reflect on how far you've come, yes. Don't pause long enough to lose momentum. That momentum is huge. I feel like in practicing, it's one of the biggest things it's hardest to get ourselves moving. But as soon as we're moving, it's actually easier to stay and keep going. Pause as you're going, but not too long to lose the momentum that you've gained. Keep going. At the end, okay, work towards it. Just like I decided to go to the very top. I could have stopped at any point. Push toward your goals. Trust that when you get there, it'll be so worth it looking back. Just like on my snowshoeing hike, that it was so well worth all the struggle, the jello legs, feeling sweaty and gross, to be at the top and have this view that I wanted and to know that, you know what, I've made it. Your journey, your musical journey is going to be no different. Push toward it in those hard moments. Remember that when you get to that top, it's going to be worth it. I really hope, this might be too soapboxy, this whole thing, but I wanted to share this experience because it really meant a lot to me, and I feel like they're important lessons. This is not revolutionary, it's not anything new. I'm sure you've heard other coaches and teachers and people and leaders say the same thing, but I feel like it is worth being often, even daily, reminded of these things. They're important little things that make a big, big difference. I hope you can find some way to implement some of these in your practicing this week. Let me know if you have any questions and if I can offer any guidance. Also, tune in to my new YouTube channel. It's Music with Nicolle. Subscribe, and that way you don't have to come to Instagram all the time. You can check out all the videos there. So anyway, guys, have a wonderful week. Happy Friday. Happy weekend. Happy practicing. Love you guys.